1776, and I had just made port after a long voyage. As any respectable seaman, I stopped at the nearest tavern to venerate at the altar of Poseidon. That is, to get proper drunk. So I took a seat at a far table in a corner and proceeded to indulge in a pint of ale. And then I noticed him. Well, more like felt his gaze piercing through my skull and wandering curiously through my head. "If you don't mind, my good sir, I'm trying to have a drink," I said. He didn't seem to care much about my objections.
"You're a sailor now?"
"I am many things, friend. A sailor now too."
"You're many things and none at all. I know you."
"And I know you not."
"Matters not. Want to hear a story?"
And before I could answer, he began his tale. It began in 1676 as Captain Lester McCoy was setting sail for the New World, and for the first time he had his son alongside him. The spirits were high as dreams of fortune and glory were on everyone's minds, but unbeknownst to them, their fates had already been decided. After an uneventful week of smooth sailing, the fortunes of the lazy admiral began to turn. First came a vicious storm that left the ship drifting at sea. Then came the pirates, even more vicious. A brief but bloody battle ensued, and in a rush of swords and gunpowder smoke, Lester saw his son fall at the hands of the pirate captain. He was but 16. Those who survived were hauled off to the brig and chained until the pirates would sell them all off as slaves. Lester didn't seem to recognize anyone anymore. Staring absently in the distance, he kept muttering over and over a single word: Jonathan, the name of his son. In his grief and desperation, he was contemplating revenge, and even if it was but a dream of a broken and powerless man, it was slowly consuming him.
"Is this what you want, Lester? Is this what you truly want?"
Lester noticed that it had become terribly cold and terribly silent, and as he watched into the man's eyes, an image appeared into his own mind. A vision of hellish retribution, the deck of a ship strewn with pirate corpses and the Jolly Roger ablaze.
"I'll pay the price."
The stranger then grabbed his arm with an iron grip, and as he did, a wave of pain shot through Lester's body. He screamed in agony as a strange mark appeared on his forearm, an ancient sigil seared in his flesh, now and for all time.
"Nunc et in perpetuum."
And as the stranger's words echoed, a thunder erupted in the distance. In a matter of minutes, the pirates found themselves violently awoken on a ship caught in the middle of a storm that had appeared out of nowhere. In the ensuing turmoil, amidst cursing and shouting pirates, drenched by the rain and tossed around by waves, Lester stood strangely still, and then when it became apparent that the ship was being swept by a maelstrom, he began to laugh. On deck, the pirates were watching powerlessly as their ship was being torn apart, bit by bit and plank by plank, gazing horrified in the abyss of the maelstrom. And then they saw it. They shot at it, they hacked at it, they cursed at it to no avail. 7 more tentacles arose from the waters and wrapped themselves around the ship, which began to creak and crack violently. Something was pulling it down. Some pirates jumped overboard in desperation, but the last thing those still clinging to life saw was the hull of the ship splitting into underneath them, and below, a giant mouth filled with sword-like teeth greeting them. Lester woke up floating on a wooden door amidst a mass of debris under the gentle morning sun. The pirate ship was nowhere to be seen, nor were there any survivors. The mark on his forearm was still hurting, but Lester didn't care anymore. He didn't feel anything anymore. Lester was gone. There was only his body and a packed sign in blood left. "So you mean to say you've seen the Kraken and survived to tell the tale?"
"I mean to say nothing. I saw what I saw.
"And the stranger who came to you?"
Salvation. Damnation."
Looking at him then sitting in front of me, in the dim candlelight, I had this strange feeling that I was talking to a man that wasn't really there, and that behind his perfectly preserved appearance was a walking corpse. His eyes, that seemed able to scour the depths of my mind, were the eyes of a nameless another, smouldering in the skull of a dead man. "How does your story end, Lester?" I asked. He smiled.
"Nunc et in perpetuum."
For as long as humans have sailed the seas, they have been fascinated with the vast, unknown world beneath them and wondered what sorts of creatures would inhabit it. The most famous of all they called the Kraken, a gargantuan squid-like creature that haunts the depths of the sea and occasionally arises to sink the unlucky ship and feed on the unfortunate aboard. The earliest sightings of the Kraken have been reported in a Scandinavian world and recounted in some of their sagas. Forevermore saga tells the tale of the legendary eponymous hero who, in one of his voyages at sea, encounters a creature he dubbed the largest monster in the entire ocean, which could swallow whales and ships with the same ease a shark might swallow a clownfish. He called it Hafigufa, sea mist. In many ways, the creature was thought of as part of the natural world. Sometimes it had been described to sit still, only partially above the water, resembling an island, in order to attract its unsuspecting prey. Another specific behavior of the Kraken is described in the Konungsskoja, the King's Mirror, a didactic 13th century text. From its pages, we can learn that the sea monster sometimes belches enormous amounts of undigested food to lure banks of fish, which then swallows all at once. There are some who regard the Kraken as nothing more than the figment of a rum-soaked imagination, a mere exaggeration spawned either by ignorance or mythological flair. In their minds, the Kraken is but an oversized squid, and the only time they pay attention to squid is when it's on their plates. Others would disagree. For instance, take the renowned explorer and occultist Gunnar Gudmund Gudleifsson. In his Magna Philosophia Naturale, he posits that the Kraken is nothing less than an otherworldly creature, a dark omen, the servant of a malicious god or demon, Leviathan. Gudmund claims to have discovered a series of arcane texts that describe a ghostly, ageless man that precedes the arrival of the Kraken. He called it Praenunciator Diaboli, the herald of Leviathan. The man, covered in mystical and occult marks, appears seemingly out of nowhere, usually to sailors in desperate situation, and offers them a way out. Some would say death is a cleaner way out, while others take the deal and forfeit their souls, becoming heralds themselves. These poor, unfortunate souls are doomed to roam the seas for all eternity in search of others who might make the same pact, they themselves stripped of all humanity. Gudmund deemed those men the plague of the seas. Closer to our days, Pierre Denis de Montfort, an eccentric Frenchman whom men regarded as a nutjob, pieced together Scandinavian myths and folklore to describe what we now imagine as the Kraken. Shall we also remember here another Frenchman who wrote about this sea monster? You might have heard of him, after all, he was the first man to travel 20,000 leagues under the sea. Of the Kraken, harbinger of doom and ferocious monster, haunter of the deep and ravenous beast, this we have managed to gather after many a long hour spent pondering over dusty old tomes. Perhaps it is indeed a monster folktales have portrayed it to be, perhaps it is an utterly indifferent creature living a life we couldn't begin to comprehend. Perhaps it is largely what we make it to be. Perhaps you should go out there and find out for yourselves.